And the second semifinal will be between the player in the bottom left, Solar, and the player in the top right, Maru. Also, both teammates, both playing for Onside Gaming. So we had Hero versus Dark on DKZ, and now we have Maru versus Solar on Onside. Also a somewhat familiar match, not as much as Hero versus Dark, because Hero versus Dark happens all the time in the online tournaments, not as much offline, I think. But Maru versus Solar seems to happen an awful lot in the offline tournaments. Not as much online, just because Maru is less likely to be playing in a lot of these online tournaments. Certainly more than he did years ago, which he was definitely one of those Korean players who just did not touch online tournaments, basically before COVID, and then everyone had to. And now, even more post-COVID, we have Maru still being a little bit stingier for the online tournament. Solar actually sometimes even attempting to go for the triple crown of the EPT Open Cups. So he definitely plays a lot, and as such, he has more history probably against other Korean players. But when it comes to a lot of history in a lot of the most prestigious tournaments, the offline tournaments, him and Maru happen, you know, fairly frequently. And that is unfortunately to Solar's detriment, because Solar does often lose to Maru. But who doesn't? Is, you know, hopefully what he consoles himself with every night, every time he gets defeated. It is particularly painful, though, because Solar is one of those guys who I think everyone just kind of agrees should have won more so far. But he is stopped either by someone like Maru, who is typically a favorite to win the entire thing, or he's stopped by seemingly his own bad luck, you know, nukes. Sure, but that was also Maru, wasn't it? You know, but just kind of like not performing up to the quality he was playing in the round of 12. Suddenly in the round of 8, it looks a little bit worse, or just he faces someone who's having the best tournament of their life, and he was, but not as good as them. You know, Solo's a bit of an unfortunate character, unfortunately. And Maru is the, fan favorites, or the favorite to win tournaments. So even though Solar can have his best tournament thus far, Maru is a stopping force for him. Solar can get awfully close to defeating against the guy, game 5, down to the wire type situation, and just not quite able to do it. And whenever he does do it, everyone's really excited, but then he gets stopped by something else. So it just, yeah, an unfortunate tale for him. Maru, of course, with too many accolades to really discuss, basically wins everything he touches, so great for him. Good for him. Good for you, Maru. Let's talk about how sad we are for Solar. But seriously, this is a real punch in the gut, I would suppose, for Solar, who otherwise might have hoped that Hero took down Maru, or Dark took down Maru, or something like that, had the bracket been played out a little bit differently. Nope, has to play against him in the semifinals. Going up against the 2 racks on the forward position now is the norm in Korean TVZ, so this is not even really worth mentioning. It's actually quite cool, really. The forward 2 racks 3 Reaper opener now becoming the standard TVZ in the Korean scene is not something I necessarily had for my 2023 bingo card, but I was starting to really believe in the potential of it for like 2024, maybe the end of 23, but it has spread, very much spread through the Korean players. Now everyone does it almost every single game, and it's when they 1 racks expand that we go, oh, okay, it's a bit different. And it's also spreading to the Europeans as well. Clem's doing this an awful lot more. So the follow-up's always the more interesting aspect to it, now that we know the 2 racks itself is so common. And this particular follow-up can be deadly. The 4 racks follow-up hits hard, hits fast. Even if it doesn't hit, they don't pull the trigger on that stim. It can still be very difficult to tell exactly how they're going to play it out from the Zerg's perspective. They don't know if it is going to be a pull on the trigger, if they're following up with another ball of Marines, or if they had a 3cc, or maybe more to the starports, that suddenly medivacs are a problem. They just don't know. And them surviving the first wave of Marines doesn't necessarily mean that they thrive. It's a very difficult situation for Zergs. So Solar, he's trying to get the information that he can, but there's only so much. You know that they're going to have some Marines to block up the Overlord. The Overlord would have gone in way earlier, and then would have been under fire potentially from a Marine built prior to a Tech Lab reactor. So there really isn't a guarantee that the Overlord will get the scout that it wants. In this case, it probably could have seen the 2 barracks building, gotten out alive. I think so, I think. But the problem with that is that if they open up with any other way, then the Courageous Overlord dies to a lot of other openers. A lot of other openers that look to kill such an Overlord, actually. So TLDR, the Overlord's in a very conservative position, and so it can't scout this. So the only time that Solar knows exactly what's going on is right freaking now. Right as the Marines march across the map. But he certainly should have been suspicious of this possibility. So as soon as he realized what's going on, of course, he already has these amount of lings, but he also bulked up his queens. So he's got everything he really needs to defend against this. He's actually pretty okay against it. He might have picked up on some hints earlier. The lack of Hellions, obviously, meaning it's not a factory follow-up particularly quickly. The double medevac follow-up would have hit around 5 minutes. And still would have required lings of a certain number. So it looks like he did just play overall defensively, and now that he knows exactly what it is, now is the time to determine if, again, the Terran will pull the trigger or not, which you don't know. You can't read Maru's mind. And in this case, Maru really is better off not pulling the trigger. He knows there's too many lings, the queens are in position with plenty of transfuses, and there's not really a reason to do so. But again, it's not necessarily a problem. And I imagine that's especially frustrating to Zerg players, who at the very least would love to be able to say, well, I defended your little dedicated attack here. Can you just, like, stop? Can you just lose? Can you just tap out? That'd be great. And it doesn't work that way. Maru's certainly proven, even amongst more dedicated builds, like the proxy to Rax, that it's not necessarily only about defending him. And this would be kind of similar. It's not only about defending them or first Marine push. Maru's third CC is on the way. He did go up to the factory and starport, of course, first and foremost. He does have one engineering bay, but now is working on a second one. He does take downsides to such a build without doing anything with it. There's no doubt about that. It's just whether or not the downsides are actually truly punishing. And I would say that from what I've seen, they're often not, especially because you have to consider that Solar does build so many lings. He's at 85 lings. That he doesn't have a particularly good economy, so you're thinking Maru's third CC seems awfully late. I don't know. Well, the Zerg's economy is also awfully late. I actually think that Solar built too many lings, and they're not doing anything either. I mean, they can't really do anything as far as chasing after the army, so that's not what I'm talking about, but they're not even trying to go for run-bys. Well, because the run-by wasn't even accessible until that third CC was down. Otherwise, a run-by would just hit the brick wall of the natural wall. So, I mean, he's going to have over 100 lings, 13 banelings, only 60 drones. And I mean, Maru's army deserves a defense. I don't disagree with that. No, absolutely not. You need some army. But this seems like an awful lot of army for the Zerg. This seems like an army that is waiting for the opportunity to jump on top of the Terran army and then immediately counterattack. And if that happens, good for Solar. Accolades for Solar, because that'll probably be beautiful. But if Maru reads this correctly, and I think he has been, then he's not really going to allow himself to be suckered into that position. And so far, so good. Wouldn't mind drop added into the mix is a really easy, low-cost way of doing damage. Because even if this didn't kill 13 drones, which is actually very effective, if it killed only 2 or 4, and the Medevac will die, you know, it's still a little bit of scouting, it's a little bit of distraction, and it's, again, relatively low cost, especially if you are primarily concerned about the potential of enveloping your own main army. Your main army's not involved, so not an issue. Solar has rebuilt the drones, and more so as well, not stuck at 60. Maru has also built up his own fair economy, now has a lot of units to work with. Maru's at home defense actually looking a little low. Maybe not. Well-placed Marines and the SCV. Well, hold on. Go back to mining. And the SCV is ready to be pulled. You're ready to get on the action. Means it'll be good enough, even though Maru is missing one upgrade compared to Solar. Solar already on the way is 2-2, and Maru only just finishing up his 2-1 by the looks of things. Does lose a medevac on his escape out of the main base, but he does retreat back to a Widowmine field and more reinforcements, actually, which some of the Widowmines do pop off on the Queens, taking down some of them, forcing them to use their transfuses. Ling's looking for that wraparound to let the Banelings actually get the hits. The Banelings will not be able to do so, especially with Maru kind of target firing at the last second there. And it looks like his plan is just to beat bot back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, never letting Solar use the full might of his army, never letting him actually get surrounded. It's very, very annoying. The actual straight up damage potential of this beat bopping might not be high, as in it's not killing the hatcheries, it's not killing 20 drones, but it is trading with the lings consistently, and it is forcing a lot of attention over here. Solar, fortunately, able to do more than one thing, does have the ling bandling run by, trying to cause some damage, but Maru was attentive to his third, saves a lot of his SCVs, only 8 going down, and will most likely save his third CC. He also has a fourth done. We do have a building finally killed by the beat-bopping Medivacs. The Hydralisk Den is the victim. No range or speed for those Hydras, which he was probably hoping to have one or the other. I actually don't remember which one was started up first, but he wants these Hydras to be effective at helping out with the main army, but also helping against these pesky Medivacs. Finally clearing out some of those forward Widow Mines, but some of the Widow Mines on the backside still reaching to get that last painful shot. 10 SCVs have gone down, but everything has been taken care of back at home. Maru's third CC remains intact. His fourth went over to plant itself as a planetary, something that Solar was able to see, but can't do very much about. The supplies have really evened up. Not a good sign for the Zerg player, as well as, well, the upgrade's still not very even, so that's something that Solar has going for him. +2 armor is over halfway done, so very soon the upgrades will be even, and Maru will have more supply. A very scary scenario for the Zerg, who doesn't have anything else going for them. If they had lurkers, then it might be a different issue, but no lurkers, no Hive technology, not yet. Hive just began. I don't know if we're actually going to see any Hive technology before this game is over. Maru attacking now from 2 different locations. This left side of the map, pretty much completely defenseless. The drones not going to be the primary targets. They're not gunned after, and they will survive, but still a nuisance. Solar knows that that will forever be there. So he has to have defenses to the top and the south, actually. Less left and right, more top and bottom, but you get the picture. 2 Medivacs, not going to, again, have a lot of fearsome firepower. Not killing the Hive, probably, but they're very capable of killing the drones, trading out with the lings, and as soon as you do think that they're not going to do anything particularly egregious, then that's exactly when they do. That's exactly when they kill the Hive. So Solar has to be wary of that. Widowmine drops, attacks over to his north, as well as where the hell the reinforcements are coming from, and what type of reinforcements are there? Solar certainly hasn't gotten a look on the follow-up for Maru. Is it more factory-based? Is it more bio-based? It's the kind of light factory style. A lot of Marauders already packing up here on the front lines. 4 Widow Mines and a tank. Beautiful anchors to this little squad of bio. Only 1 Medivac, but the amount of splash is going to say, it's going to make Solar wary to actually engage. You can see that his army right here is looking awfully a lot bigger, but doesn't want to take care of things. And the main base is still under attack, while the Lings jump on top of the Marines as they unload. An unideal situation for the Marines. They will lose their lives, and thus the drop will finally end. 3-3 has started up for the Terran player, not so for Solar, is trying to get some of his crucial upgrades, as well as trying to tackle this engagement. He will clear out all of the tanks, well, all was 1, as well as most of the Widow Mines. But again, cannot necessarily clear out the Medivacs. A Viper would be very helpful in this situation, and finally, he is adding one. I'd wait for that Hive finish, of course. Solar holding on here, despite what looked to be a moment of snowball. Actually was not so. He didn't die, but I'd still say it's a very difficult scenario for the Zerg player, who is completely on the defensive and has not been able to reach towards a 5th base, as Maru has, of course, saturated his 4th at this point, 5th, 6th, 7th on the way. That's a very bad sign. Solar's going to take really cost-efficient engagements, which the Zerg is not exactly just, destined to do, especially with the composition that he's on. Lurkers can be a little more cost-efficient, but even then, Maru is working his way up to Ghosts, and the Lurkers would be kind of a stopgap. They wouldn't be the end-all be-all. They would not solve all of Solar's problems. So while Solar has done a great job holding on to against all of the pressure that Maru has thrown at him, I do believe that the end result is inevitable. Maru will win this game. And he's not going to do it with one swift blow, but with many tinier punches. And Solar just now not even defending the right side, was trying to grab his 5th base, and now will lose his 4th for it. It looks like he will leave some reinforcements back on the 5th to save it. That was good on him. That will do exactly what it needs to do. Well, will it though? Will it though? Still a decent amount of Medivacs and Marauders left over, to be honest. I think it might do the trick. I don't know. We also have a lot of army onto the bottom right. So Solar, are you running a little low here? Maybe a little low. The battle is way too close to look comical even. As the Vipers are used over here to clear out those medevacs, the last Marauder will win against the last Hydra. And well, of course, Solar, as I said, was losing the game. That just felt like a particularly painful way to lose it. That last tiny little battle not quite going your way. Maru did what he does. Constant aggression. And Solar could not blossom. Hoping the next game has a little bit more back and forth. Let's check it out. In the top left of Dragon Scales, we have Solar. In the bottom right, it is Maru. And Maru did take last game in a pretty convincing fashion. Solar never seemed to really be thriving, which... against the style of play that Maru showed there, the forward 2 racks, which he is once again doing, but then also into the 4 racks, I think it could be kind of easy for a game that looks very just one-sided, just always Maru, to actually quickly rotate the other way, just flip completely the other way. So it's always a little odd to summarize such a game, because it could be summarized as all Maru. Maru was everywhere. Maru was killing the guy. It might have not been with one big punch to the face, but with many different jabs, and that's fine. But actually, there are a few moments in those types of games, and even in that game, I would say, where it is possible for things to just flip 180 completely. As I was trying to explain, if Solar had been able to use his rather fearsome army to actually envelop Maru's forward army, the ones that weren't really looking to engage because they knew how powerful Solar's army was, if they managed to, and then force a retreat and then immediately chase after, we've seen such games end heavily in favor of the Zerg. As soon as the Terran army gets picked up in the medevacs and has to then unload in the midst of battle defensively, the Zerg player wins almost no problem. We've definitely seen that. So, yeah, in that last game, soup to nuts, you know, that was pretty much Maru favored. He made no mistakes. He was very, I think, cognizant of the problem that I'm just talking about right now. And so it was Maru favored. It was. But I'm just trying to explain that it's not necessarily that Solar will always look so... not helpless, but so just incapable of finding his moment, I suppose. Like, it's very, very likely that Solar will, of course, win a game. He does mostly, I think, when he faces against Maru, win at least one game. It's also very likely that he will have his own game that looks rather even one-sided, because Maru slips up once in that last game with his circumstance. He lets one army get surrounded and then has to race back home, and it gets very difficult very quickly. But of course, Maru might not ever go for the 4 racks follow-up again, which has changed that circumstance a little bit. It can still be a game plan of the Zerg player to still ultimately get that kind of thing going. Big army, surround the Terran, go for the counterattack, and win the game based off of a momentum and a snowball. But the other follow-ups might make it a little bit more likely for Maru not to have to be out on the map. You know, the 4 racks... by nature, but it has to try and do something, even if it is just to literally posture and present itself. But if you went into a fast 3cc and then into even like Hellion Banshee, I mean, that's some defenses, I suppose, that aren't supposed to be captured out on the map anyway. And then you can keep all of your reinforcements, your Marines and your tanks and whatnot back at home while that does the poking and prodding. It does look like... wow, that queen's gonna go down. Whew, I would say worth the Reaper. I was gonna also say it looks like we're gonna have that 2-1-1 follow-up. I'm not sure what he's saying, but I'm sure it's sadness about losing that queen. The Overlord actually was tucked into the corner back here, so it's gonna get a full scout, which is really nice of Solar to do. Again, there might be some alternative opener that Maru could choose, in which he would have a Marine faster, thus guaranteeing a suicidal Overlord. But in the typical case of the forward 2 racks, it is Tech Lab and Reactor ASAP after 3 Reapers. And so this Marine, you know, shouldn't kill the Overlord. The Overlord gets everything it needs to see, which is that 2-1-1 follow-up, just trying to get at 3cc 2-1-1. You will have 2 medevacs out in the field, possibly even the double-double out in the field. But then with the first 2 medevacs, Solar is going to lose his Overlord. Thought he was gonna just go back here. There we go. Yeah? Hello? Okay. Yeah, Maru might go for the double-double, but then as soon as his first 2 medevacs go across the field, or first 1 medevac actually, it's not reactoring them out, then he will also be sizing up Solar's intentions, trying to determine if he once again is building a gigantic army or if he's actually just building the smallest army possible and macroing. Yeah, Maru actually just going for a Widowmine drop right off the bat. You don't have 16 Marines if you immediately swap off and build 2 medevacs, which is like why Beyond often goes for a Banshee here. But this is a unique way to do things, because he's bringing the Marines. I wouldn't have been a surprise if he just did the 4 Widowmine drop. He's bringing the Marines too. Interesting. Well, Solar does have 10 speedlings. I mean, that's hardly enough to take care of Marines backed up to a corner. I guess they were just looking for freebie overlords, actually. They were going to go all this way. If they caught an overlord, great. Then they would leave. If they didn't catch one, they'd leave anyway. Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. 2 Widowmines pop off and we'll kill a queen. Natural is under threat now, and Solar, I was worried about his timing, is totally fine. Totally fine. But another queen's going to fall. Another queen falls, less injects, less creep spread, less queens, target firing medevacs in the future, so on and so forth. Just good damage from Maru so far, who saved 2 out of 4 of the Widowmines and is now following up the Widowmine drop with 16 Marines. I don't know if Solar knows about this. He has 36 lings, so he's not totally defenseless, but no banelings. Always a little concerning when the Marines get into a nook. We know that lings will not be enough. But in this case, they did not get into the nook, so everything is Gucci. We're all right. Double of the shipper is now on the way, so that means that Solar will have faster upgrades than Maru with his single engineering bay, but that is actually the typical way of things with the 4 Churaks nowadays. Not a surprise. This time around, it looks like the Widowmines will die, killing 2 drones, but no more queens, and the 2 medevacs off to the left are not finding much success. Maru is trying to build it back at home. 3 CC, getting saturated. Also, 8 barracks. Wait. Oh, wow. That confused me. I saw 3, which is very normal. Usually it's 5 barracks, and then you add on 3, that's 8. But it's actually 3 barracks, and then you add on 5. And that is still 8, just the other way around. So yeah, it is 8-raxing. That's very, very, very dedicated. That's a lot of Marine pressure. That's almost relentless. And it's not typically... Well, it's not all surprising on Dragon Scales, sorry. It is not typical on Dragon Scales, but it's not surprising on Dragon Scales. And it is something that Terrans absolutely still throw in every once in a while. The change since 2-3 years ago is that the 8-rax is no longer as all-in as it once was. The chances of you actually macroing out of an 8-rax was extremely low. In fact, people didn't even try. If it didn't work, you just tapped out. Now we've had some more play where the emphasis is on 8-rax, but you do still get a okay timed 4th base, and you just kind of deal with the lackluster factory production while you slowly build up to a 2nd factory. Doesn't set you up for that super late game turtle that we know Maru is very good at, like if you went into a 4th CC at 7 minutes, but it does give you that potential to just pressure and gain momentum. And if that works, great. If it doesn't, then yeah, maybe going into the late game will be difficult for Maru. Solar is trying to get his 5th base up and running, already has his 4th saturated, 77 drones, certainly wasn't caught with too much army this time around. They actually played this out very well. Seems to have his foundation for his Zerg player set very nicely indeed, even catching the 2 medevacs off guard to the right side. So Maru was just a second away from paying attention. And Solar will be getting up to a hive. Lickety splits. Now, Maru going for an 8-rax as Solar tries to dive towards a hive. Makes me a little concerned for Solar. Obviously, when he has a couple of Vipers with energy, then they're going to be very useful to deal with the tanks and the Liberators. But, you know, can he get there? Maru not sending the full force of his army out in the map quite yet. If he even does, again, there's more Terrans going for kind of like a macro 8-rax. You know, so if his tanks just literally stay at home this entire time, this isn't really the 8-rax of old. But I feel like you're You're at least supposed to do the typical 8 racks push at least once. And there we go. The tanks are coming across. They have more of a distraction in the main base. If it does manage to find damage, then fantastic. And it is forced to pick up and into the awaiting arms of the Queens. Good focus fire. Does not grab the medevac, though. But as I said, it's maybe a little bit more of a distraction. Maru's real plan is to get those tanks sieged up on the offensive. Already cleaning up a lot of that creep spread. And the 3 medevacs will survive. The Queens will have to join back in on the fights when the tanks are already sieged up on their hatchery. It doesn't seem terribly ideal. A couple of Marines do get caught by the Banelings, but there's still so much army left over. But hey, Solar actually going for a run by. He's going to bust through the supply depots, take care of a tank. Reinforcements are here, but 2 Banelings going to be enough to kill 9 SCVs. Not too shabby, but not exactly a killing blow, especially as the reinforcements do take care of this. Plenty of Terran on the other side of the field. Solar under a lot of pressure, going to lose his 4th base. He does have upgrades on the way. He's got Vipers on the way. He's got everything on the way, but not what he needs right here, right now. And actually, to include in that list of things he does not have right now, I'm also going to include Larva. He is a little Larva blocked. Queens have been pulled, hatcheries have been killed, and just generally not having a queen on the far right hatchery might prove to be a bit bothersome, but more Lings tackling the 3rd CC, this time at a very critical moment. Nothing to defend against that, so supply depots go down, production goes down, reinforcements stalled out, and Maru is now left with only this army on the other side of the map. But good news is, Maru's army is pretty freaking good. So it's the only army that he has. It's an okay one. And Solar needs to come back and take care of this somehow. He's got 1 Viper in play. Will that actually be crucial here? He's trying to come in from multiple different angles, but still, that's a lot of tanks and Liberators and Marines on the backside to help out, and the Banelings have not made the connections that they need. The Banelings need to meet with the Marines, not the tanks, not the Liberators. There's still so many left over, 44 of them. I want to say a good 40 of them on the other side of the map, and that will be enough to snowball. Once you take that fight as a Zerg player and you exhaust your Baneling count, the majority of your Banelings, and there's that many Marines left over, you cannot rebuild another good enough army to take care of it, especially because there was tanks and Liberators still available. It just was not nearly enough, and Maru will take a 2-0 lead in this best of 5. In the top left of Grespon, we have Onside Gaming Solar, and on the bottom right it is Onside's Maru. Maru with a 2-0 lead is not all that surprising, but I will hold to what I said in the last game, and that Solar should have 1 game taken at least, and I guess it has to be this one. So if it's a spoiler, I swear I didn't know, but that's just usually the way these two actually battle. It's not necessarily all that one-sided, even though the actual winning against Maru is a little difficult for Solar. You know, the overall series, he usually wins games against him. I'm actually curious how many times there's been 3-0s between these two. Yeah, like almost never. There's been 2-0s. You know, if this was a best of 3, it'd be a 2-0. You know, can't argue against that. But if there's ever a best of 5, very rarely are there 3-0s. Last time it happened was in 2020. So, and they play a lot. They do play a lot, and they play a lot of bigger than best of 3 series because they meet later on in tournaments, or they play offline tournaments. So yeah, I'm glad I was right about that and didn't just make something up. So Solar, like I said, should take at least a game, and it wouldn't surprise me if the game is taken because Maru is a little overly aggressive and doesn't quite control the scenario as well as he should. Like in the first game, he controlled the overall scenario very well, and then when he doesn't control it as well, Solar finds that one perfect strike, and Maru can't stop the snowball. It is also possible that Solar wins a macro game. I mean, just to be super clear, there's not only one chance for Solar to win, but as most of us know, typically it gets more difficult to kill Maru the longer the game goes. Not easier. His late game is not his weakness. Nothing is a weakness, really. The only thing that's I would say Terran players typically are weak to, or is maybe over aggression, not knowing when to pull back, opposed to put the pedal to the metal. But Maru was, I think, never particularly bad about that, actually, despite being a youngin. And, you know, it's like the more aggressive and, you know, overly aggressive, overly confident you are, the more that we attribute it to youthful arrogance. I don't know if Maru ever was quite like that, but he's only gotten better over the years at determining when he should pull back or when he should actually push. So anyway, But, you know, late game, super late game, ZVT versus Maru and Gressvine, like, I don't know. Solar could win it. Solar's late game is also very good. It just sounds very difficult. So anyway, 2 racks, of course, for the forward. But here you go. Here it is, right? This is the changeup that I was talking about. This is why the Overlord positioned aggressively is actually sometimes a problem. So the Terrans are constantly going to try and combat this, right? They're gonna show this potential follow-up, building Marines that are going right into the tech lab and the reactor, so they kill the Overlord, so that Solar next time says, well, shit, I guess I shouldn't put my Overlord so aggressively. So he puts it all the way back here, which then completely nullifies the chance of it getting a suicide scout. It cannot determine what's on the follow-up. Then, as the Terrans stop doing the Marine openers, and the Zergs once again get confident, they do get some scouts they shouldn't have otherwise, and then the Terran does the Marine opener again, and the circle of life continues. Anyway, just wanted to note that because, you know, sometimes we don't see it at all. Sometimes the Terran player doesn't even care if the Overlord starts to get a little too courageous, but in this case, Maru did. He wanted to push that back. He also is microing his Reapers very well this entire time. They will go down, they will die, but the amounts that they got, that was a real squeeze, the last drop right there. Almost killing a queen, too. Oh, they did kill a queen. Sorry, almost killing 2 queens. Yeah, this one was a little lower on health. But not actually doing so. Still, a queen going down plus 5 lings, actually? Okay, it's not too bad. Oh, I do like this. Okay, all right. Well, here we go. Ling Banling actually on the way. And this is something that Solar showed at Gamers 8, and I still am not exactly sure what would be good against this as the Terran player. I'm looking at the situation, and right now this seems like one of the better scenarios for the Terran against the early Ling Banling busts, but is it going to be enough? 2 Hellions is not exactly what you want against a Ling Banling bust. 4 is really the magic number. Oh, and you don't want the supply depot lowered either. Okay, well, hey, he picked it up. That's not the main problem here. Good focus fire on top of the Banling. Now the SCVs can help out a little bit, but unfortunately the Lings get us around on the Hellions, and that was the real problem. 2 more Hellions are on the way, but the SCVs have already been slaughtered, and the 2 Hellions are going to be running into Ling reinforcements. Banelings perhaps as well. Where the hell do those Marines come from? This is already too much damage, I believe. Maru gonna have to tap out, and Solar's early Ling Banling bust against this 2 racks opener continues to work out. But I think that might be the best option follow-up. Well, I guess the literal best option would be a 2-base factory Hellion follow-up, I guess. 3rd CC delayed that a little bit, I'm sure. Yeah. But that's unlikely to happen. But I think this is kind of the best scenario, and it was just a matter of actually keeping his Hellions alive. Yeah. Solo's always got that in his back pocket, apparently, but if it was literally the most effective thing against the 2 racks opener, Zergs do it all the time. So there's absolutely things the Terran can do to stop that from looking as good as it is. So Solar gets 1 game, but can he actually get another? Because I don't think that Ling Banling attack will work again, and defeating Maru otherwise does prove to be quite a challenge. Let's see. In the top right of Royal Blood, now with a point on the board, he is Solar. In the bottom left, we have Maru. That's a very early SCV, isn't it? Yeah, he's actually proxying. Yeah, get it. Of course, you don't have to only restrict yourself to your home base for your 2 racks. Catch my drift. You can go for the proxy 2 racks. Something that Maru used to be super well known for, especially because he was seemingly trying to prove it was a macro opener. He was doing it like every game in TVZ. If he was offline and he was doing it every single game, he really gave it a college try to make it in a macro game, even if he didn't succeed with the 2 racks. If it was online, he would 2 racks, not win with it, and then just tap out immediately. That's who he used to be. Not anymore. Now, I would say online and offline, very similar. And so even if this were not to win the game straight up, I believe that Maru would still actually play out of this very, very well. And honestly, in the past, I think when Maru was doing this a little more often, or just in general, Terrans did a little more often, I would say that Solar was weak to it. I think, you know, I haven't compiled the amount of times he's faced it and won against it, so I don't know if this is based off statistics, but I feel like Solar has had more unfortunate defenses against 2 racks than some other Zergs. and he doesn't look very confident against it, even if he does handle it. But that's not to say that he always fumbles. Like, he does have his own list of games where he's defended the 2-racks absolutely perfectly. This is not going to be a defense based off of scouting the 2-racks, as you can tell. The Overlord, the second one, does stay behind to see if a SCV is coming to build a bunker. That's the first indication. Otherwise, no 2-racks was found. Maru did place them rather far away to ensure they were not found, because the Overlord did kind of look. The bunker is on the way. Drones are being pulled. Reapers are going to be the option. The gases were built back at home. This is not Marines. And actually, I got tricked as well, to be honest. To be completely honest with you. I got totally 100% bamboozled. This is not Marines at all. Maru's bunker is a complete fake. The Reaper in the main base means that Solar knows that by now. But, you know, now it's Reapers. This is Proxy 2-Rex, which still has its own set of problems. Just because you're like, oh, okay, it's not Marines, doesn't mean that it's okay, it's all Gucci. This is still a bit difficult. Now, I would say Zerg players have gotten very good against the Proxy Reapers, but this doesn't seem to be an example of that. We'll see. The really important thing is, I think, queen retention at this point in time. Obviously, when speed is done, then you have a little bit of a better time as a Zerg player on defending this, but queen retention, those are your big defensive blockers right now. Also, trying not to lose too many drones, obviously. Yeah, that one queen is a goner if she actually gets too close. Other one could definitely help out, and Lings are looking for the surrounds. Still have not been able to find it, though. They've pushed the Reapers off the cliff, but guess what? They can hop. Oh, Lings actually got in. Didn't actually kill any SCVs, though, so it is so far drone kills, not SCV kills. However, no queen did fall, and as such, with the third queen popping, speed growing ever closer to finishing, I believe Maru's time to deal damage with the Reapers is now ended. So, okay, yeah. So I'm still on the side of things that actually the Reaper proxies are manageable, let's say. Because I'm sure Zerg players would disagree that it's easy. But they're manageable by Zerg players nowadays. So that did not snowball. Usually a little more concerning is whether or not the timing of your third hatch as a Zerg player is all that good. But I would say since Maru completely evacuated, Solar's third hatch should be okay. First and foremost, get those drones up. Barracks going for a scout, making sure that there's no Baneling busts, especially since one was just done. 6 Reapers is an awful lot. 6 Reapers, properly controlled, high ground, low ground, and grenade micro will deal with a very good number of links. Probably more than 20, actually, if you're really in a good location. Ooh, the follow-up here is going to be Armory Widowmine drops. So that Natural Command Center will finish. And then I suppose the third CC should be on its way soon as well. Yeah, you should be building up to it. This barracks will eventually come back home out of the tech lab and all that good stuff, but not for a little while. And then just drop. We've certainly seen some very Widowmine drop-heavy metas in this matchup. Seemed like it might be a new thing that was a little more stable than it actually was. I don't think it lasted all that long. We're kind of going back into it. I'm talking about the time that, like, Hero's doing a lot of, like, quick double factory drilling claws types of aggression. Maru was doing it too as well. We're not going to have too many Widowmines by looks of things. 4 Widowmines into Hellions, some map control, also possibility for Hellbats. I do not believe that is Maru's intention. But, you know, maybe if he sees an opportunity. No Spore Crawler, so he knows these Widowmines will stay a little while. Okay, 3 drones go down. And now Solar needs to use a drone to build a Spore, which is an annoyance in itself. Oh, already did. Okay, good news then. So these Widowmines will not get a second shot. That was a Spore Crawler building. I was just blind. And this Widowmine over here will not get a second shot either. So not the most effective use of the Widowmine drop or the armory thus far. However, oh, a Hellion. A good old-fashioned Hellion drop. That's, yeah, sometimes that's just the right thing, you know? Hellbats have been disappointing for the most part. But an actual Hellion drop, now that has some pepper on it. Now, where is that Liberator? I feel like it's coming in somewhere. Hellions do drop out, but on top of creep, so they are noticed and dealt with. Medevac trying to get some healing in to allow the Hellbats to do their job, which it actually will. Playing with fire, and you get burned. Medevac does go down. Maru drops at that exact moment. It was trying to micro this Liberator. There was no juicy targets really at the third base. Went over to the natural, and actually going to get a couple of drones. A few. A quad. I don't know what the word is for 4, but whatever it is. A Quinn? Sure. We have a Reaper hit squad, now being the form of harassment. Later in the game, I was right about the 3rd CC, of course, that was invested into, and then the barracks, also engineering base finishing up as well. All the production starting to get lined up for the Terran player. For the Zerg player, I mean, Solar is struggling. He has lost little bits of drones every 20 seconds, it feels like. So 17 in total have gone down, as well as 32 lings. Solar never really comfortable on his side of the map, and that is very important, actually, because if these things were all a little bit less effective, I would say that Solar would probably be even snowballing, macro-wise. If everything was a little less effective, let's say it was only 10 drones instead of 20, then he's at 65 versus 48. And that sounds a whole heck of a lot better. But even then, maybe not as good as you would want it. He's also had his roaches figured out, which might be a little bit of a bummer if he could have kept that hidden somehow. Not that that was necessarily his intention, but if he could have, if Maru would just chill for a freaking second, then maybe there'd be a bit of surprise there. But Maru knows about the roaches and knows to be wary of either a roach all-in or just a roach-based game. So keep building tanks, which he was already doing initially anyway, but just confirmation on that. And the 5 barracks will be settled on production. 3rd CC will be landed, and Solar will not have a 4th base. All in all, Maru's consistent aggression has once again done a tremendous job suppressing the Zerg player, similar to the first game, but even earlier on. And now Maru with the hard-hitting 2 medevac drop, but I think it's full of Reapers, which, I mean, there's still damage. But whether it was Reapers or Marines, yeah, the roaches would not go down. Does manage to target fire the Spore Crawler, get it killed before the medevac dies, and that's one less thing to worry about as he continues hopping between bases. Canceled 4th base, prolonged Solar's 3-base scenario. That's getting more and more and more worrisome. And the medevacs should be able to save every one of these units. Queens are on its tail, of course. Solar is going for Infestation Pit, so he's not going to go for the big attack. I do believe the big attack would not work. He would take forever to get maxed out. Let's say he was investing everything he has into getting maxed out. Probably do so in the next 60 seconds. In 60 seconds, that'd be 4 tanks. Properly set up. However much bio can be produced at that time as well. It just wouldn't be all that convincing, I think. But not to say that the macro game is all that convincing either. Just is going to give him maybe more chances at taking the appropriate risks or taking some decent battles. Maybe. The upgrades favorable to Maru, actually. He did grab double engineering bay, but then didn't grab his 2nd upgrade by the looks of things. So I think he made a mistake. But it still puts him ahead on the upgrade. So 2-1 is on the way. Medevac's flying every which way. They're also trying to get that scout. They want to know if it is going to be the all-in or it's going to be the macro game. I mean, they're seeing a 4th base with very, very eagerly attained gases, and I feel like that's a big tell. They don't need to see that the 3rd is still missing one. Well, isn't missing one, sorry. I mean, that is a gas-thirsty Zerg. Thirsty Zergs. And while Roach Ravager does require, gas, I don't know if it requires 8 that quickly. In fact, I'm fairly certain it doesn't. Although, I've definitely been wrong about that in the past. Let me know in the comments. Point is, usually that amount of gas and that amount of, I don't know, urgency to getting the gas usually points to more late game technology, and that's certainly what Solar's doing. Maru will now get that, I guess, best confirmation so far. I mean, he saw the gases, he saw the lack of gigantic roach force. He was putting 2 together at the very least. He knew that he could move out, and even if it was a maxed out purely roach force that intercepted him, he probably had a good enough army to survive anyway. So now he's just on the position of the 4th base. Lurkers are ready. They're here. They're going to buy some time, but there's not that many of them, and they do not have their upgrades. Triple drops continuing to be a nuisance. Some Hydras will pop to try and deal with this, and the Vipers are available, so maybe it won't be a nuisance forever. But it's doing damage, and then these Marines still free firing on a hatchery. 14 drones have gone down. Liberator harassment, some of the cause of that. And Solar is going to find himself once again on even bases with his opponents, because Maru's 4th, turning into a planetary, is finished. And now a fifth is even on the way. More drones going down to the natural as this triple drop was not taken care of. Now the Roachborn also under fire. And that hatchery on the front lines also just a couple of tank shots away from death. Solar is losing control of this game. His main army, should it be able to collect itself and get across the map and into Maru's production line, is actually fantastic. If it could just do that, then there'd absolutely be a chance for Solar. But the more that Maru keeps Solar on his side of the map, the more that Maru feels comfortable in this game. He'll have more tanks. He might even get up to Ghost, add on Marauders, and he can slow the push if it is something that Solar plans on doing. The collect everything and the F it, throw your hands up in the air. Maru should be able to see that incoming and say, okay, stand my ground, build up a defense back at home, and then as long as things don't go to absolute shit, like these tanks are just broken willy-nilly, no problem, then should be good to go into the late game. And Maru does not overstep. He unsieges, he moves away after killing the 4th base. I think he's well aware that the actual army of the Zerg is still something to consider. He does not have an immediate answer to the lurkers in such a way that ghosts are an immediate answer. Tanks can do a little bit, but the combination of lurker Viper we know is very dangerous as well. So ghosts, once he has those, he'll probably have no fear whatsoever. And he is getting them as I am speaking. Also continuing to get good upgrades. 2-2 is going to be finishing in about 20 seconds. Whereas Solar could not even afford his additional Carapace. So only getting up to 2-1. And Maru's extra bases, extra orbitals, so much production, 4 ghosts at a time, cloak on the way, vehicle upgrades, continuing to improve his tanks, of which the tank count, by the way, is at 11. A very healthy number. And Solar needs to get one hell of an engagement going. I don't know if he can do it, though. Like, this is a Spellcaster Lurker can be a very powerful combination. Again, especially before ghosts, but the way that Maru has set up this depth really means that at the very, like, even if he's losing his tanks, maybe he's just forced to continue to back away. It's so much time the Solar has to invest into that. But even if, you know, that was an if. Solar actually is not able to collect any tanks. A couple of Vikings were produced, and Maru's using them to ward away the Vipers from free kills. I mean, Maru's got this down. I know the supplies are completely even, but the situation absolutely is not. Solar running out of minerals and gas on his first 3 bases. His 4th is fresh, but it is also very close to being under fire. There you go. A couple of nice Viper abducts. There we go. 3 fairly expensive Terran units going down right there. He did almost crucify his own army. I did notice that, but he didn't. And now Maru does have even more bases coming down. I mean, he's going to be taking over the entire map. He'll be the Zerg player. He also did build up his ghost count. Now it's at 6. His tank count still at 8. And it looks like he is a little distracted by the... Ooh, wow, a lot of lurkers. You see a blur on the minimap, but that is all of the lurkers. 12 of them. But with ghosts out on the field, they're not as troublesome if they get on the Terran side of the map. Before ghosts and they suddenly appear on your 3rd base and you're not ready, that could be very devastating. But with ghosts, oh, and they're prepared too. Oh no! Oh, how quickly it turns around. Maru, I guess figuring as soon as he saw no lurkers over here, this must be the lurkers, separates his army quite perfectly and is going to deal with this, I would say, basically no problem. Basically. Command center stopping a little bit more of a concave, and it's, well, a little more complicated, especially as even more Zerg comes forward here. Still at 14 lurkers, man. This guy, how many lurkers did he actually build up to? 24 in total in this game. He does manage to break through the first line of defense, but the ghosts manage to survive, and that's really the most important thing. More tanks coming back as well. Solar's one punch is trying to work out. I really got to commend this. This is looking like it might actually work, but it's not quite on production. And the lurkers are going down, so it was a little more exciting. It was, but as you can see, the end result was what I was talking about. It just, as long as you can get into position, concave, tanks, ghosts especially, pure lurker is not so intimidating. I mean, but if these ghosts had died over here, that would have been a real problem. The tanks might have been able to broke in. Maybe the production is actually one step away from being camped. Maybe. And kudos to Solar for making it a maybe. But Maru had this game kind of under his thumb the entire time. So Maru will 3-1 Solar and move on to face Dark in the best of 7 finals, which will be coming up, well, I guess tomorrow if you watch this fresh. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow for the grand finals of the KSL SummerSlam.